למען החי ורעי, למען החי ורעי, אדם בנה אתה בנה, שלום לך.
Hello. Today we're discussing Parsha Shoftim, Judges. This Parsha is mostly about leadership, all kinds of leadership. Let's look at it. Most of what I'm going to say comes from teachings of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Akiva Tatz, and Chabad Rabbi David Kaplan. Parsha Shoftim is the classic source of three types of leadership in Judaism, called by the sages the three crowns. Why three crowns? I don't know, because there should be four, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, three crowns of priesthood, kingship, and Torah. This is the first statement in the whole history of the principle of separation of power, and which is used in the foundations of American Constitution, the principle of separation of power, which means basically the power in the human arena is to be divided and distributed, not concentrated in a single person or office. So in biblical Israel, there were kings, priests, and prophets. And in addition, as far as I'm concerned, there were judges and enforcers of the law, which is police, basically. Kings had a secular or governmental power, which is the same as of our governments of today. Priests were the leaders in the religious domain, presiding over the services in the temple and under other rites, and giving rulings on matters related to holiness and purity. Prophets were mandated by God to be critical of the corruptions of power on any level, whether it's judiciary or whether it's the kings, and to maintain sort of decency amongst the powers in the society, as well as to recall people back to Torah when people drifted away from it, which did happen many times actually. Later on, the prophecy was ended by Sanhedrin, and the Torah power was shifted to the tzaddikim, sages, and rabbinical fraternity later on. Our parsha deals with roles of judges, enforcers, kings, priests, and prophets. The most attention-catching is the section of the kings, for many reasons. First, this is the only command in Torah with it, the explanation of this is what the other people do. This is what Moshe says to the people. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, let us set a king over us like all the other nations around us. Normally in the Torah, the Israelites are commanded to be different, not to follow the traditions, rules, and customs of the local people. The fact that this command is an exception, and this was enough to signal to the commentators that something going on here. And through the ages, there were a certain level of acceptance about the idea of monarchy altogether. Second, the passage is strikingly negative because it tells what the kings should not do. And it says the king should not acquire great numbers of horses, or take many wives, or accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. These are the temptations of power, as we know. And as we know from the rest of Tanakh, even the greatest of the kings, the King Solomon himself, fallen into them. Yeah, he had a great number of horses, more than 1,000 wives, and was extremely wealthy. And the third, consistent with the third statement regarding the kings, is consistent with the fundamental Judaic idea of leadership, which is service. So it says that kingship is not domination of power or status or superiority. It says the king is commanded to be humble. He must constantly read the Torah so that he may learn to revere Lord his God, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites. It is not easy to be humble, of course, when everyone is bowing to you, and when you have got power over life and death of anybody within your kingdom. Moshe here states one positive and exceptionally important dimension to royalty. The king is commanded to study constantly. Leaders must learn. That is the principle at stake here. Yes, they have advisors, elders, counselors, and the inner court of sages, and all the other literally advisors, etc. And biblical kings even had, in addition, had prophets. Samuel was the prophet to Saul, and Nathan was the prophet to King David, and Isaiah was prophet to King Hezekiah, and so on, to bring them the word of the Lord. Today we don't have prophets. So particularly Jewish leaders must be scholars, Bnai Torah, children of the Torah, and they are directed to lead the people of the book, if they are directed to lead. The secular leaders must learn as well. We know that, for instance, Prime Minister Gladstone, who was 4 times Prime Minister of United Kingdom, he had a library of 32,000 books. Every time he read a book, he made a note in his diary. And there is its effect in black and white that he has got 22,000 of those entries in his diary about the books he read. Now, the man lived for 88 years. Assuming he learned to read properly after 80 years, so for 80 years, 22,000 books, it means he read 275 books a year, or 5 books a week, during his lifetime. If you visit the house of David Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv, you will see that the ground floor is very Spartan, very poor, on the level of total austerity. But the first floor above is a 20,000 volumes library, consisting of books, papers, periodicals, etc. Ben-Gurion was a ferocious reader, as well as a prolific writer. There are many others. For instance, Winston Churchill wrote almost 50 books and won a Nobel Prize for literature. Reading and writing is what separates a statesman from just a mere politician. We know that King David and King Solomon both were writing and reading a lot, and there is no secret of that. King Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all people of the East, and greater than all wisdom of Egypt. And from all nations people were coming over to learn from him and to hear him speak, to learn from his wisdom. However, he did fall into the trap of power, as I said earlier. We should know that Chokhmah, wisdom, means something slightly different from Torah, which Torah is commonly associated with priests, prophets, and then kings. Chokhmah includes worldly wisdom, which is human universal rather than special Jewish or part of Judaism, Jewish heritage or part of Judaism. No, it's not. Chokhmah is common trait. Midrash states, if someone says to you, there is wisdom amongst the nations, you better believe it. But if they say there is Torah amongst the nations of the world, do not believe it. The case of Solomon is particularly poignant because of all his wisdom, he was not able to avoid the three temptations set out in our parsha. He did acquire a great number of horses, great many, more than 1,000 wives, and he accumulated a lot of wealth. So wisdom without the Torah is not enough to save a leader from corruption of power. To be a Jewish leader means spending time to study both Torah and Chokhmah. Chokhmah to understand the world the way it is, and Torah the way it should be. It is clear very few of us are destined to be kings, rabbis, presidents, or prime ministers. However, there is a general principle at stake here. Leaders learn, they read, they study. And every one of us who is trying to learn Torah and trying to understand it at least a little bit is a leader. As a parent in relation to your children, you are a leader. As a manager at work in relation to your subordinates, you are a leader. So we are leaders in whatever aspect of life we choose. You can find aspects of leadership. So as leaders, look at it this way. Every one of us has got the requirements to learn to control his emotions, his statement. What I am trying to say, the Shoftim Parsha talks about the high moral and ethical standards requirements for the judges, enforcers, police guards, and kings. It says that the enforcers must be at every gate of the city. Kabbalah says that there are 5 gates which lead into human soul: sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. The meaning of this is that we all must be uncorruptible. We must have uncorruptible guards at these 5 gates, since they are the controllers of our behavior. The right judge, king, or religious leader, every one of us, we are first of all leaders of ourselves. And through our 5 gates, we provide inputs to our mind, soul, resulting in a specific behavior. If we all learn to take the Torah law and follow it to the maximum, through every one of our senses, this is how we can express our love for Hashem. What I'm talking about? We use our mouth, for instance. Taste, which is tongue, right? It's part of our senses, and we use our mouths to speak, to state our ideas. Well, sometimes we use our mouths for rude words, for bad language, and we use the same mouth actually to say prayers to God. We communicate to God with the same tool. So when we use bad language, we basically pollute the tool. And the same applies, if you think deeply about it, to every aspect, to every one of those 5 senses I was talking about. If we all learn to take Torah law and follow it to the maximum, we can learn control our emotions and control our statements and our perceptions of reality. Leaders should never stop learning. There is how they grow, inspire, and teach others, the young generations, or those people who lost connection with Judaism. And when we're trying to bring them back and grow together with them by using all our senses correctly, by keeping the guards at what we hear, what we see, what we look upon, what we smell and what we touch, to keep it clean, to keep it pure. It's hard, but it's possible. And that's what gives us ability to teach and to share knowledge. Thank you very much. I will see you next time.
למען בית השם אלוקינו, אבק שטוב לה. למען השם אלוקינו, אבק שטוב לה. השם אלוקינו, אבק שטוב לה. למען בית השם אלוקינו, אבק שטוב